Are you a real estate professional navigating the bustling landscape of New York City, or simply someone fascinated by its ever evolving skyline? Either way, you're in the right place. Welcome to another episode of the Big Apple's Core, where we break down the complex world of corporate and commercial real estate. Join us as we explore the latest trends, challenges, designs, and opportunities that are shaping New York City. Today's episode is brought to you by Cornet NYC's learning sponsor, the Rockefeller Group. Rockefeller Group, a love for people, a love for the city.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Big Apple's Core podcast, your one-stop shop for all things commercial real estate in New York City. My name is Ali Morse with Steelcase, and today we're lucky enough to have a colleague of mine, Dr. Tracy Brower, with us. Tracy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it, Ali. I am the Vice President of Workplace Insights for Steelcase. I have my PhD in the sociology of work, so how we affect our work, how it affects us. I've got a couple of books that I've written. The most recent is The Secrets to Happiness at Work, and I'm a senior contributor with Forbes and Fast Company. So writing's kind of my happy weekend hobby. So really glad to be here with you, Ali.
Of course, and your book is one of my favorites, the most recent one. So
Thank
I
you.
recommend it to all of our listeners.
Thanks.
Well, Tracy, I have you in a lot of my customer interactions, and you've obviously studied work in the workplace extensively. And today we're in more dynamic, uncertain times than ever before. I think, work has really changed more in the past 5 years than it has in generations. So I'd love to talk with you a little bit about general workplace trends that you're seeing. So what's the biggest shift you've seen in how people and organizations think about work today?
I think one of the biggest shifts is just the level to which we're super conscious about it. I remember in the olden days, or even before the pandemic, which seems like the olden days, we would talk about how do we get on the radar screen and how do we make sure that everybody's thinking about the criticality and strategic necessity of the workplace and the work experience. And I feel like we've gotten to this point where it's super conscious. It's part of our national conversation. It's part of our global conversation. And I feel like another shift is that we're really focusing on the why, not just the where, when, and how of work experience or how and when people show up, but why is that important to organizations? Why is that important to people? So I think that puts us in the right kind of discussion for thinking about work experience and then really, really looking at the huge amount of data there is today about work experience and how it relates to results. So all of that, I think, is really good news in terms of where we are in our dialogue.
Mm-hmm. It's a great point. I was actually talking with one of my customers this morning, and he mentioned that he had an intern come up to him, and the intern was on day 7. He said, this workplace is just intentional. So I love the word intentional, and I think that goes back to what you mean about it just being relevant.
Yeah, completely. That's a great compliment. I love that.
Let's shift gears a bit and talk a bit about the talent shortage that we're seeing across all industries. I think it's not only about attracting and retaining top talent, but employees' needs are much different than what they used to be. And then on top of that, retirement rates are at an all-time high. So what strategies have you seen work best for attracting and retaining top talent?
Yeah, that's a critical question today for sure. One of the things we know is that the talent shortage is here to stay. Every developed and developing country has a declining birth rate. So no matter how old we are chronologically, today, we are going to face this talent shortage, both in our personal life when we, can't get seated at the restaurant because there's not enough servers, all the way to attracting and retaining and the colleagues that we work with and all of that. So talent shortage is here to stay. One of the things we know is that top talent outperforms average talent by about 400%. So it's really critical, not only that we've got talent, but that we are able to retain and engage top talent. If we look at why people join an organization, it's usually for the culture as a whole. Like people come in and say, I'd like to work here. And these are people I'd like to, be around. And this is an organization I want to grow with and learn with over time. So join has to do with kind of overall culture. Stay, the number one reason people stay statistically is still because they have a best friend at work, right? It's literally because of the connections, colleagues, the people that we value in our work experience. And then the number one reason they leave is leadership. Lots of us have heard that, and that is still statistically accurate, that we don't feel eye to eye with leaders or see eye to eye with leaders. We don't feel inspired. Maybe we don't feel like the leader is, I don't know, recognizing us or giving us enough opportunities. So leadership is a reason that we leave. And you think about that related to work experience, right? Like when we walk into an organization, how do we feel about the culture? What are the signals that we are getting in terms of the experience of that place? When we think about, connecting with colleagues, what are the ways that the work experience creates neighborhoods or work cafes or places where we can be in projects together? And when we think about leadership, what's our strategy? Do we have leadership spaces that are separate? Do we have leaders who are also embedded? What are the opportunities for interaction with leaders that the place helps us with? So those are some of the things that are relevant to the talent shortage and then how that relates to work experience.
Absolutely. We'll talk a little bit more about that leadership piece because I think that's more critical than ever. But relating it back to space that you mentioned, how do you think organizations should balance flexibility with the need for in-person collaboration to build the strong talent pipeline?
Yeah, this is another one that's all over the press right now, right? And I think a lot of times we see press that says, "Oh, it's an either or," and I really think we're really in good shape to think about it as a both and. Depending on the role, depending on the responsibilities, depending on the expectations, the more we can provide flexibility, the better statistically. So we know statistically that flexibility pays us back. People are more committed. They report they're more innovative. They report feeling more connected to the culture when they have choice, autonomy, and flexibility. And there's tons of research, we can get into this later, about the power of presence and the extent to which there's a spillover in engagement, productivity, satisfaction, all kinds of really, really good things that happen when we're together. But as we think about how we balance those and how we manage them, I think it's really helpful when we start with principles and we communicate those really clearly. What are the principles that are going to guide our policies and practices as it relates to hybrid and who gets to choose, right? Is it about customer first? Is it about meeting our business goals? Is it about making sure that we're putting kind of the employee experience as primary? What are those overall principles? And then another thing that we need to do is kind of link that with the content of the work. So what works best is if people have choice and control from a hybrid standpoint or a flexibility standpoint based on the work they're doing, which is a better practice than just based on hierarchy or just based on job title. A third thing then is to make sure that there's lots of transparency. Why does this person get this choice, or why does this job get that choice, right? Transparency breeds trust. And then I think guardrails are really helpful. A lot of organizations kind of leave it to chance, come when you want to come. But one of the things we know is best practice is really setting guardrails. Maybe there are core hours. Maybe certain departments work together and they decide they're going to be in on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Maybe we decide that, we're going to have certain groups, an A group and a B group come in to make sure that we've got enough space and optimal density when we're there. So those guardrails are another way to think about it in terms of how we manage it well. And every company is going to make their own best decisions, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. Those informal collaboration moments are so important for me in my day. Like it's what keeps me going. And then of course the people at Steelcase are what makes it even better.
I know, isn't that funny? I have about an hour commute every day. And, like we talk about making it worth the commute. And we show up and it's a great environment and we run into each other and we get new ideas. And then we say to each other, we really believe this stuff. This really works. So yeah, passion is a good thing.
Let's talk a little bit about the leadership piece because I think leadership roles are evolving. We know that employees want more trust out of their leader to then better trust the organization that they're a part of. But from that, you need effective communication and engagement to just feel better connected overall. How should leaders, in your opinion, rethink their approach to communication engagement in hybrid or dispersed work environments?
Yeah, this is something that's really shifted over time. I frequently think about the great sift in leadership over the last 5 years or so, right? Great leadership has always been about presence and accessibility and consistency and holding people accountable to outcomes and results. But even more so, I think in the last few years, we've seen the really, really great leaders kind of rise and really provide a great model for others. And I think it really does have to do with tons of communication. One of the things that happened, interestingly, is podcasts. Here we are on a podcast, right? Podcasts went crazy in terms of their popularity over the last few years. And some of the sociological research suggests that's because we were craving the sound of the human voice, which I think is kind of a cool and interesting way to think about it. The other
Yeah.
thing we know is this is actually related to nature. When we hear birds singing around us, like literally when we're outside and we hear birds, that tends to have a calming effect on us because it suggests that things are okay in the environment. When birds stop singing, that's usually because there's a hurricane coming or a big storm or something's going. So we can think about kind of the birds singing, right? Like we want to hear and be in touch with each other. And that is at an instinctual level, which is kind of cool to think about. So one of the first things leaders can do is communicate and be regular in their communication, even having a kind of a cadence of communication, whether it's a regular one-on-one or a regular town hall or a regular email update. Another element of great communication on the parts of leaders is repetition and planned redundancy. And one of the hallmarks of adult learning is we hear it and we take it in when we're ready for it. And we're all ready for it in different points and different places. So when leaders are kind of planfully redundant, not in a pedantic way, but in a way that is like, hey, let's talk about this again, and hey, do you have questions about this? That makes a really big difference. I think another thing leaders can do is really think about the beginnings and ends of meetings. Like, I think great leaders are often like, let's get tasky, let's get down to business, let's get things done. But when we have personal relationships with each other and we feel that level of personal knowledge and responsibility, that actually drives follow up and follow through. So that chit chat at the beginning of the meeting or that close out at the end, like, hey, when are the notes coming and when are we going to see each other next, actually makes a difference. So paying attention and being intentional about that beginning and ending. And then I think the other thing we can do is be really careful to remember remote participants. I worked with a great leader a few years ago, and this is when less people were in the office, and she had some team members that were international. And she literally kept a little post-it note on the side of her computer with their names on it because she ran into other team members all the time. And she wanted to really, really keep front and center her team members who were not in the same office as her. So I just thought that was a great example. It seems sort of I don't know, systematic and less systemic, but it was a
Mhm.
great reminder for her that helped her to really keep them front of mind.
I love that. I also love what you said about the birds singing on both like a personal and professional level. I think about myself. I've lived away from home here in New York for over 5 years now, and having that kind of bird singing moment with my own leader, where she checks in on that personal level, as well as I'm super lucky to have her for that.
Cool. Such a
Yeah,
great example. I love that.
yeah. So with that, what role do you think empathy plays in leadership, and how can companies cultivate it?
Oh, wow. I did an article a few years ago for Forbes about, I think it was called Empathy is the Most Important Leadership Skill. And it went really, 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 I don't know if it went viral. I don't know exactly what the definition of viral is, but I think we're at about 3.5 million views on that article. And empathy just struck a chord with people because empathy is good for people. We all know that, but it's also really, really good for organizational results. Statistically, it's correlated with innovation and connection to culture, retention, greater satisfaction, all of these kind of really, really good things. And empathy is important because it causes us to kind of pay attention. Attention is our most scarce resource today. We're distracted and discombobulated, and we've got all this information coming at us. So when somebody's actually paying attention, when they ask us a question about how we're doing, when they're actually listening to our response, when they're not distracted when we're talking to them, when they maybe don't have to be a social worker, but can offer us resources or a listening ear, that makes a huge difference. And the other thing I always like to think about with empathy is that curiosity is the foundation of empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy is about thinking about what somebody else might be thinking, and then also kind of processing what might they be feeling, cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. So when we're curious about, what might they be going through? What do I notice about their behavior today? How can I be supportive? Those are really great examples of empathy. And proximity drives that, right? Our work experience drives that, whether we're connecting virtually or we're running into each other in the office or running into each other at a client meeting or something. That proximity makes a difference too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely the proximity piece. We'll switch gears a little bit into company growth and maintaining a strong culture as companies grow. I have several questions for you in regards to this. So, just starting off, what do you think are the key factors for a company to scale successfully?
Scaling is one of the harder things, right? It's kind of when we're small and we have that line of sight to each other, it's easier, quote unquote. Culture is never easy. We have to do, culture by design, not culture by default. But scaling can be a really, really big challenge. I think one of the things we can do is be really clear about our definition of culture. Edgar Schein is kind of granddaddy of organizational culture in terms of research scientists. And he talks about culture as an iceberg, and above the surface of the water are the most visible artifacts of culture. And the more we talk about culture, the more we are explicit about culture, the more we define what we want, actually, the more correlated that is with great outcomes. I think another thing is the way that we communicate is a demonstration of our culture. There's that old saying, people don't believe what you say, they believe what you do. And that's true of people. It's also true of organizations. How do we communicate the newest organizational shift? How do we listen to people? How do we respond to people at an organizational level? So how we communicate, I think another way that we scale culture is with leadership development.
Mm-hmm.
Statistically, cultures tend to be a magnification of a leader's personality and style. The leader tends to parlay that to the organization. And so when we develop leaders and make sure that leaders are behaving in concert with culture, that makes a huge difference. When we have opportunities for engagement, when we're really clear about our hiring and selection decisions, that helps scale culture. And then the last thing I would say is accountability matters a ton. Like there's a great saying that a culture is significantly determined by the worst behavior it will tolerate. So we gotta hold each other accountable, right? For not just what we do, but what we say and how we behave and how we demonstrate our values.
And that again connects back to the leadership piece that we were just talking about and building trust and all of those great things.
Yeah,
Um,
so
s-
true.
yeah. So now thinking about space, what role does workplace design and strategy play in supporting companies as they scale?
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting and important for those of us who are in this world, because place is the most visible artifact of culture. It tells a story about what we value. We see cues and signals in the physical environment. Um, and so we want to make sure that we're thinking about, if we say that we value technology, we got to have a lot of great technology available for people. We have to be encouraging, experimentation with IA or AI, for example, within the right guardrails. If we say we value collaboration, we need places for collaboration. If we say we value results and productivity, we have to give people privacy and places to do heads down work when they're really, really needing to do that production. If we value teams, we need to have meaningful team spaces. So I think there's an intentionality as it relates to place and culture. And we need to be thinking about what are the consequences of the way that we create settings and places so that we are creating the right kinds of community based on design.
My favorite experience every morning when I get to the office is I'm greeted by our concierge member from our showroom team up on our 8th floor where we have the Central Park views. But not only do we have the Central Park views, but I have Marilyn's beautiful face smiling at me and saying good morning. And it really just makes the experience. It kind of helps me debrief from the crazy subway ride that I have coming in.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've been paying so much attention to community-based design, right? And it's about urban parks as an analogy for the places that we design, but as one example of community-based design settings. And it's also about the actual people, right? Like, hey, there's Marilyn and she's got a smile for me and we know each other. That familiarity goes a long way.
Right. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes companies make when trying to build a strong culture?
I think a really big mistake is to take it for granted. I think we need to be really, really intentional. I think another mistake is not holding people accountable, right? Like if people are seeing certain behaviors, it suggests to them, hey, this is what goes around here. There's a really lovely conceptual model that suggests that experience is the bottom of a pyramid that drives beliefs, which drives behaviors, which drives results. So I think we can consider that a mistake is to not be thinking enough about how experience drives what people believe about the culture, therefore how they act, and therefore the results that they get. So I think that mistake of not being explicit, not being intentional, not being really, really informed about how we create those experiences effectively. Those would be the top mistakes that come to mind for me.
Okay, Tracy. So that being said, how can organizations ensure their culture remains strong even in those remote or hybrid work settings that we're seeing so much of?
Yeah, that'll be important. I think it's about lots of communication. It's about the perception of proximity, where we are creating leadership presence and accessibility, leaders who are present either virtually or in person, leaders who are accessible and responsible. Sorry, not responsible, responsive, both responsible and responsive. And when leaders are thinking about how they build team relationships, all of those suggest that proximity that is both perceived and real, even when we're working remote or hybrid.
Exactly. Great point. What role does the physical office play in reinforcing company values and culture?
Oh, this is huge. I think the physical environment is such a center of gravity, right? When people, we actually have some amazing research that suggests them people are more satisfied with their physical experience of work. They actually feel more connected to the culture, more innovative, and they're more likely to be retained. And so that physical experience helps us to create great connections with other colleagues. It helps us to create and feel a sense of proximity to leaders. It also helps us feel connected to the culture, and it can give us a sense of purpose as well. And all of those are important for engagement and satisfaction and productivity. And so, like we talked about, some of those elements of the physical experience are part of that level of outcome that we get in terms of the way that we make our contributions.
Totally. It's a huge piece for me too, because I live in a really small apartment in New York City where I don't have access to natural light or a great ergonomic space to work. So it's so nice that I have, our space here in Columbus Circle to come to every day to kind of give me that break from the square box that I live in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. Our personal experience has so much to do with what we need from the work environment. I love that.
Okay, we're going to switch gears into my favorite topic and the one that's hottest of all, the future of work. With the rise of AI, changing employee expectations that we've talked about, and then, of course, the flexible work piece, I think business leaders are navigating some of the most challenging times they've ever had, but exciting times. So, if you had to predict, what do you think the most successful workplaces will look like in 2030?
That's such a long way out, but I love the thinking, and I'm with you, right? Like, that's the fun part. I think it's going to be about both presence and flexibility. I think we're going to get to the point that we figured out kind of the why, not only of work, but the why of place and the why of presence. And we know that there's that huge correlation with satisfaction, productivity, and engagement. We know there's significant measurable spillover in the knowledge transfer. There's significant measurable spillover in performance and significant measurable spillover in social contagion. So the energy that we get from each other. So I think the future of work is going to be about flexibility, but I also think it's going to be about presence. The other thing I think is that it's going to be about enriched experiences. How do we create places that foster community, that encourage people, that give people both a sense of their own role in community and the importance of the group in our community-based designs. And I think it's going to be all about braiding the technical and the technological with the place. Like, we know that AI is taking things by storm, and we know that we're going to need work experiences that both use technology effectively to create great experiences themselves, and that accommodate the new ways that we're thinking about work process. Each of us will have shifts in how we do our work and the nature of our work. And the work experience is going to have to allow for that and really catalyze that. So I think that that will be part of the future of work as well.
Definitely. I think the part that you said about just AI and how spaces can accommodate for that, people often say, AI is going to take my job, but at some point you have to kind of reel that back in, and you have to think about the people that actually drive it and how, the work that we do can support it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what advice would you give to business leaders who are trying to navigate the future of work and what's to come?
Yeah, I think we need to stay aware. Resilience is about three things, right? Staying aware, understanding and making sense of what we're aware of, and then responding and really, really being innovative based on what we see and what we know is coming, or that what we're guessing is coming. So I think we're going to need to stay aware. And then I think we want to test and try and learn and experiment and really, really lean in. If we just look at AI as an example, statistically, organizations can make great strides in innovation with AI if they do AI and that experimentation in a centralized way. But the more we empower individuals to try and test and learn, the more we scale that innovation, because nobody knows their job better than the person doing it. So it's a both and, right? We set guardrails and we're careful to protect confidentiality and IP at the same time that we're actually empowering people. And I think it's like that with the future of work as well. We're staying aware, we're trying, we're testing, we're experimenting, and we're continuously improving, knowing that we're going to want to continue to improve all the time.
Love it. And Tracy, you're obviously exposed to the latest and greatest research as it relates to this topic. So what's one piece of research or even an insight that you've come across recently that you think more people should know about?
Yeah, there's so many things. I'm such a research geek, but I think I mentioned that top talent outperforms average talent by 400%. There's also new research that if we sit within 25 feet of a top performer, our performance
can't hear
increases.
Anything she's saying.
Just a second.
Are you? Okay, that's good. I hope it is coming across okay, because okay, perfect. That's good.
Am I back for you, Ali?
Yes, you're here. Did you hear the question about the latest research or insight that you've come across recently? Did you hear the question about that?
I did hear the question, and I was halfway through answering it. I'll go ahead and start the answer again, and I'll keep going.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's totally weird. Not your fault. Yeah, there's so much new research, and can you hear me, Jack? Okay, I'll keep going. There's so much new research. It's kind of hard to choose, but I think I mentioned before that top talent outperforms average talent by 400%. But there's also research that if we sit within 25 feet of a top performer, our performance increases 15%. So this is when you say, who am I sitting by? Who wants to sit by me, right? So that's pretty cool in terms of presence. And then there's also new research that if we sit within 65 feet of other people, there's a measurable knowledge spillover. So I just think that data about presence is a big deal. There's also some new data about social skills and the extent to which social skills are declining, and the extent to which people are saying, I don't feel comfortable carrying on a conversation. I'm not sure I feel confident in, public settings or mingling settings. I think there's something to be said for us being together in lots of different contexts, both work or associations or informal or personal, where we're really building back those social skills and those connectivity skills with each other. So that's some of the research I think is not only relevant to us today, but also we can think about in terms of its implications for the work experience.
Mm-hmm. On that social skills piece that you mentioned, I think I heard this from you actually in a conversation. The micro interactions that we have on a daily basis now are just really contributing to that. And, just our like overall well-being on how our interactions are so micro and quick and, just the quick hits with each other. So I can see where that comes from.
Yeah, totally. There's research that those superficial interactions actually really contribute to happiness and satisfaction and engagement. So no interaction is kind of too small to help us feel part of a community.
Exactly. Well, Tracy, that is all I have. Is there anything else you'd like to leave with us today?
Say that again, Ali.
I was just saying that I'm finished with questions. Is there anything else you'd like for me to ask you or anything else you want to share today?
I don't think so. I think the last thing I would say is that this is a great time to be doing the work that we all do, right? Place is such a huge contributor to a great experience. And so we have a wonderful opportunity. We might have felt a sense of purpose 5 years ago, right? But especially today, we can kind of wake up in the morning and say, what we do really matters. And this idea of place and presence and work experience actually really contribute to the bigger picture of engagement and happiness and productivity and outcomes. So I think go team, we're doing really, really good work together.
We sure are. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I seriously learned so much from every conversation I have with you. So it was great to spend this time. And I totally enjoyed our conversation. So thank you for joining us on the Big Apples Core podcast.
Thank you.